or implicated. For me, I draw a line. You can be mentioned, they've been mentioned here, but to be implicated for me is a step higher than being mentioned. So to be implicated must be corroborating evidence to say indeed you do this. So for me, that is implication. So this is what I'm saying. I struggle to find evidence to corroborate the oral evidence that people are giving here.
Thank you. Mr. Malek.
Mr. Manyi, don't contextualize my question. I have not asked you about proceedings involving the Gupta family relating to Estina in other courts. I have asked you questions about evidence in this commission. You have been following the proceedings of this commission since it began, correct?
No, in and out. I've been listening and not listening, because sometimes I would come and listen here and be very frustrated. My whole morning is gone and I'm not seeing any evidence. People are just talking and talking and talking. So maybe out of that frustration, maybe when I left they produced something. But most of the times that I was here, I was just seeing people giving us theoretical perspectives on matters and all that. So I do not have oversight. I mean, as I sit here now, I'm speaking under oath. I sit here and now I can't point to any piece of evidence that anybody here put on this table. But I know a lot of lyrics that they've waxed on everything. But
you accept that the proceedings of this commission are televised live and they are reported on credibly in news media, both print and television, almost daily. Do you accept that that happens?
Two things. Yes, I accept that happens, but I also think the commission must not take it for granted that we are good on TV and read newspapers. For instance, I don't buy newspapers just on principle because of the amount of distortions that they have to correct people all the time. This morning on Twitter, for instance, being here, I make a clear statement of reading from the internal audit report that whatever point I was making. And then we have a journalist here twisting that and saying that was a Scopa observation or something, and yet I was very clear that these were the findings of the internal audit report. So I have lost confidence in the newspapers. I don't read newspapers.
Yes, but you watch the proceedings of this TV, of the prosecution on TV. That is why you're able to see what Ms. Williams said about you in your absence from this commission, but on TV, right?
I think it's important to contextualize that. I was written a letter. I was told that on the 31st of August, she is going to be here. So I had a vested interest in that particular case, yes. But I don't get letters from the commission every day to listen to the report.
Mr. Manyi, you know, do you not, that Mr. Maseko came to tell the chairperson about the extent of unlawful instructions imposed upon him by a member of the Gupta family? You know it. Mr. Maseko came here and testified almost for a whole day about that evidence. Do you have reason to doubt what he told the chairperson?
Do I have reason to doubt?
What Mr. Maseko told the chairperson about the true nature of the instruction given to him or imposed upon him by a member of the Gupta family?
Yes, I have reason to doubt.
Do you have reason to doubt what then Deputy Minister Jonas told the chairperson about the offer that was made to him by a member of the Gupta family?
Let me start with the first one. I'll come to that one.
Please answer the second question, because to answer the first, you can explain the second question later on.
Yes, I have reason to doubt.
Minister Nene, then Minister of Finance, came here to tell the chairperson a number of things, including the way he was dismissed. Do you have reason to doubt what he told the chairperson in that regard?
I didn't listen to Minister Nene's one. But I listened to it too.
You did not listen to the evidence of Mzwanele?
No.
Did you follow the evidence of Minister Gordhan?
That's where I struggled, actually. I came very excited. I took the whole day to listen to Mr. Gordhan because I thought, because he was the Minister of Finance, he was going to have tangible information, paper trail, and all that. I struggled. I sat here and I listened and I listened, and I lost concentration, to be honest.
But you hear what he said to the chairperson, even though you may have lost concentration.
I think by definition it means if you lose concentration, you can't hear as effective.
Do you have reason?
Well, for what it's worth, Mr. Manyi, let me mention that if I recall correctly, Mr. Gordhan, like I think a number of people who were at National Treasury at some stage have indicated, and I think he also indicated that he has other matters in regard to which he wanted to give evidence, but he was advised by the Commission's legal team that that would need to come later, because at this stage the Commission is dealing with victims of difference. So I just want to mention that he might not be done in terms of things that he wants to cover.
Okay, thank you for that. I will listen when he does that.
Thank you.
Mr. Manyi, you heard the evidence of Mr. Phumza.
Yeah, partly.
You heard that part of his evidence when he told the chairperson about what Mr. Gondongwana said to him.
About Mr.
Gondongwana?
Or about the phone call or something?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard that part.
You heard that evidence? Yes. Do you have any reason to doubt what he said to the chairperson as you sit here today?
Well, yes, I do.
Explain to me why?
Because I would have thought, you see, I could start from the beginning. The three people that us have reason to doubt, so that is clear. For instance, that started with Mr. Maseko. He said, the president said, mogul. In other words, and the chairperson was very clear to explain that statement bullet by bullet, what it means, that help these Gupta brothers, so to speak. Now, I was DG myself, so ministers, because they are public reps, they are the face of the department, they are the chief face of the department. So people interface with ministers, people interface with the president, because these are the people that go in the ballot box. So people go to them naturally to say, I need this, I need that. And the presidents and the ministers, the thing they can point to is to the DG. And the DG must then point the people to processes that must be followed and all that. I mean, if Mr. Maseko had said that the president said to him, I don't care about what processes that must be followed and all that. I didn't hear him saying, he just said help. So that would have been said to me by a number of people, ministers, to say, help these people. And we call the people in, you explain to them how the process works, that is helping the people. So that was my understanding. But the characterization of that request was a characterization that could lead to only one conclusion only, that the president was sort of getting him to do something that was unlawful. So that's why I have doubts about the rest of everything else. So Mr. Jonas, for instance, he makes the claims that he makes, and the next thing, he's not even clear who actually did this. At one point he says it's Mr. A.J. Gupta, then it's not clear, then somebody else. Then I'm not sure if what is this thing and so on. And by the way, part of the disturbing thing, chairperson, which is in the public domain, is that they were in some hotel and then they drove to Busan. I'm saying to myself, why does the deputy minister leave his bodyguards, everybody, and drive with this young chap on a car to some place that he said is not even familiar with this place? place. So all those kinds of things, they just leave you wonder as to what exactly was the play here. So things like that, Chairperson, for me, they just are things that I just don't understand. So I can't vouch for people that have got those kinds of, what I think are gaps in their depositions.
Yes. Mr. Manyi, you indicated earlier on that TNA lost its government business because it was punished for revealing what you call white-collar corporate capture of the state. Did I understand your evidence to be correct when I characterized it that way?
I was punished for that.
Yes. When, in your view, did this punishment begin?
This punishment started, I think, around 2017. In fact, as I come into TNA, you will see, that it's in my affidavit that I came into a loss-making organization that was already bleeding. This thing was bleeding something like 5 million rand a month, roughly. And I thought I was going to stem the time, and my biggest preoccupation with this chairperson was the big thing for me was to save jobs. That state bullet employed 500 people, and I thought if I replace the Guptas there, I can save those 500 jobs. But it was not to be. As we sit here and now, 500 people are without a job on something, in my view, that could have been prevented. So it is a very sad state of affairs. If somebody had a problem with the Manyi or the Guptas, that should have been dealt with, but the business should not have been undermined, which was providing an alternative view in the media space, which was providing employment to a whole lot of young people, mainly black. So I really think that was a tragedy, Chairperson, to have lost that business.
I thought that you told the chairperson that the reporting slant of TNA from the beginning was not to behave like an enemy of the state, but also to slant reporting in a manner that reflects positive elements of state activity. And that's why you liked it, correct?
Yeah. Yes. So Chairperson, maybe you raise this because this is a good date. Excuse me. When we did the IFMS report, this happened around May, June 2017. This is when the height of hatred began, actually around that time, around May 2017, because the system works in collaboration, Chairperson. You then have a situation where the whole business model, which Mr. Maleka wanted to, is alluding to in his question as to what is the business model. The business model was both private and government. So the private sector people, they are very, they hunt like a pack, Chairperson. You mess up with one, you've messed up with all of them. So when they saw how we report on this, because they know some of them are doing these things elsewhere, so they say, no, these people are not good because they are the people that are exposing our secrets. So let's shut them down and so on. So that started to, and in fact, they create, then what then happens, Chairperson, they create such a frenzy around the new age, such a stigma, because then it's a whole cabal of 4 big media companies that inform the narrative out there. So they paint this narrative, they stigmatize TNA such that even ministers get harassed in parliament. How much money to spend with TNA? Now ministers were members of parliament, even at the provincial level, were beginning to be uncomfortable now because of this, because we've got the DA on that side that is also anti some of the transformation messages that this media house represents. So therefore, because they have created this monster called the Guptas, They've created this monster. So they want to know who is dealing with this monster. Now, if this was such a monster, Chairperson, the question is, why is it that National Treasury still had it in its systems? Because really, if this was such a rogue activity by this public, this house, it should not have even qualified on the Treasury system and all that, because it's something that is doing things that are wrong. But because at a factual level, there was no substance to all this, this was all just a media hype designed to kill an alternative view, designed to entrench a mainstream narrative. This is what they did.
Chairperson, can I place on record that my questions are fairly straightforward? They elicit a yes or no answer, and they do not require this long-winded explanation, which I did not call for.
Try best that you can, Mr. Manyi, to answer the questions directly. But when I say that, I'm not saying necessarily that you can't contextualize, but just try your best.
Chairperson, I think it's an unfair request this way. Let me give an example. It's an unfair request because, let me give an example. One of the questions given here is, we interviewed. Now, if the answer is yes or no, then I'm going to say no was interviewed. Then media goes out there with a headline, Manyi got the job without an interview, when in fact the truth of the matter is that the interview issue does not arise because I was transferred. So a yes and no answer can be very misleading.
No, I understand what you are saying, Ms. Manyi. I understand what you are saying. But if we were to answer on the basis of all the erroneous things that the media is going to do, we would be here for a very long time. So what I'm saying is, I acknowledge that there may be questions where legitimately you might wish to say more than yes or no. That's accepted. But there may be there may be others where maybe the explanation might be too long. So let's take it each on its merits. So yes, it's a general thing. Okay. I'm not saying say yes or no all the time. Just exercise your judgment, and let's see how it goes.
Yes, but at the same time, there are loaded questions. I think let's just be alive with that. Sometimes
you must feel free. If you wish to say something, you can indicate to me if you want to add more. Okay. The idea is not to have a situation where your evidence is not fairly portrayed, or fairly given, but is to strike a balance between taking too long and giving an answer that you are not happy with because it's too short. Okay, Mr. Maleka.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, can I just explore two last questions on Mr. Manyi's liking for the New Age media newspaper and his dislike for the so-called mainstream media, with your permission. See, Mr. Manyi, you have now told the chairperson that the reason you regarded the mainstream media bow included the very fact that they were critical of the state in their reporting, correct?
You disappeared. They were what in their reporting?
They were critical in their report about state activity. And that's the reason why you did not like the slant of being almost always critical against government.
Is that in terms of the mainstream?
Yes.
Well, no. That was just 10% of the issue. The rest of the issue with the mainstream media is that most of the time they get things wrong. They get things wrong most of the time. So one cannot place reliance on what you see in the media. It's wrong all the time. Most of the time it's wrong.
For that part of 10% you're talking about, they were critical of the state, correct?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm just repeating what you told the chairperson.
You're saying critical mistakes.
For that 10% of the reasons why you did not like the cow,
Yes.
it is because they were critical of the state in their reporting.
Okay, yes.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand that. Mr. Malega, is your question to Mr. Manyi this, that one of the reasons, or the reason why I didn't like mainstream media is because mainstream media is critical of the state.
In the way they reported on
In the way they reported on state matters.
Yes.
Okay. And the answer, Mr. Manyi?
The answer, Chairperson, is not no. The issue was not the issue was not because we were critical of the state. The issue was not they're not getting the facts right. The state is always open to criticism, but the issue is that when they criticize using wrong information. That is the problem. That's what we don't like about it.
Okay, okay. In other words, as what you are saying is they were not doing their homework properly.
Yes, Chairperson.
You see, Mr. Manyi, a mere criticism of the state and what state actors are doing, it's nothing new. When TNA was criticizing the state, on your version, it was revealing problems about National Treasury, about this, what you call wastage of 1.7 billion rand. That was nothing new. The media has always done that.
But aren't you, Mr. Manyi, proceeding from Mr. Malega, proceeding from the point that is the criticism that you say he had a problem with, whereas he's made it clear that his problem with the mainstream media wasn't the criticism, but it was them getting their facts wrong.
Yeah.
Chair, I understood him to say that there are many reasons. One of them relates to what he calls 10% of the critical reporting by the mainstream media of state activity.
Maybe you can clarify, Mr. Manyi.
Yeah, no, here's the issue, Chairperson. The IFMS one, as an example, the story was broken by our group. It was broken by TNA and N7. And the length, and not only did the story get broken on hearsay and whatever, it was broken and broadcasted on using tangible information from the same report I just talked of here. And what would happen in the media space, Chairperson, when they do their thing, whatever they do, there's some kind of collaboration of sorts. Then you would just find that all the newspapers are pretty much saying the same thing and what have you. So we're not part of that part. So what that does is that it then diminishes the impact of what you're trying to say, because they don't want to report what we've reported, or not that we need it to be done that way. But then what they then do, when they do their own reporting, then they just find ways sometimes to, if they like a particular department, then they will find ways to find a positive spin of things. So with us, what we were doing, what the New Age and the N7 was doing, was to try and report things very sharply, whether it's right or wrong. When it's right, we really keep praises on it. When it's wrong, we do what we do. And we don't try to be the spokesperson of various departments.
May I clarify the question by being factual?
Okay.
I think it might help all of us. Mr. Manyi, can you go to Exhibit M1? Are you at Exhibit M1?
Yeah, I've got.
Can you please go to page 231?
Yeah.
We have explained to the chairperson that page 231 reflects the total art spend by GCIS to all the media competitors, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you have indicated that the total art spend for that year, 2011 to 2012, was 192 odd million rand, correct?
No, not correct. 194, I indicated.
194.
Yeah.
Right, let's work with here. And you have indicated that on that figure, TNA for that year, and that year alone.
I'm sorry, Mr. Malega. I think I just need to say something to Mr. Manyi relating to what you were discussing earlier on, for what it is worth.
Yes.
Mr. Manyi, you were mentioning, at least in part, that the mainstream media was getting certain facts, or was getting facts wrong, or they were not doing their homework. And you said something about what the New Age was doing, how it was getting things. I think I must just mention to you that, well, the New Age is not there anymore now, as I understand the position. But after my appointment as Deputy Chief Justice, they asked for an interview with me, which I granted. And following that interview, they published an article in which I had lots of complaints. This was raised with them, and it was indicated to them that a lot of things that they said in that article had simply not been part of the interview. And they were asked. They had indicated, journalists who attended or had promised to send the article before it was published so that I could have a look at it. It was published without being sent to me for me to have a look at it first. And then when I saw it, I found that it had a lot of things that were never part of the interview. And this was pointed out to them. Fortunately, Mr. Nat Ngube of the Office of the Chief Justice was present throughout the interview and had actually recorded everything. So they refused to correct the article and apologize. And they were informed that what had been discussed at the interview had been recorded and that there was a record. So in the light of this, would they please correct it? I think at some stage there was an indication they would correct it, or they may have undertaken to, but ultimately they refused, despite the fact that they were told that there was a recording. Yeah. And subsequently, I think something was sent to various media to indicate that there was something. There were a lot of things that were incorrect in the article published by the New Age about me arising out of that interview. So, for what it's worth, I thought I must just mention that there is that incident that occurred between me and them.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I must say I rest my case. Thank you, Chairperson, for that corroboration. But again, if you have people that, despite you showing them the real transcript of the report and they refuse to correct what they are saying, why should you believe them when they say New Age is people?
In fact, quite was the fact that they didn't show interest to say, can we listen to the recording?
Yeah.
One would have thought that they would say, oh, you have got a recording, let's listen to it, because maybe we got certain things wrong by mistake. They didn't want to even listen to that, but they refused to withdraw and apologize and correct.
That's correct. That's what was subjected to, Chairperson. And when we raise these things, then we're seen as being unreasonable. For instance, on that one, as recent as now, Chairperson, you see, this one, the start, they say Gupta sets up for sale and so on, and they put my face there and all that. Now, why? What is my face doing on Gupta assets? And the only reason they're doing this is deliberate, because they have already characterized Guptas as monsters and what have you. So now, because they want to deal with me, so in order to deal with me, they must mire me into this thing, so that what become sort of a proxy for all the things that Gupta stand for. Then I must suffer all of that. This is the kind of South Africa we have. Very unfair.
Yes, no, I thought I must just mention that there was that experience for what it's worth. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to explore that issue further, but my understanding of self-regulation of the media in this country is that there are always channels available to lodge complaints where there has been factually inaccurate or unfair reporting. And there is always a code to which most of the major media houses subscribe to. There are inquiries constituted by the press ombudsman, whose decision would be subject to appeal by the appeals committee of the relevant self-regulator. And that explains why in a democratic country we all have to be men and women of the law. But where I was, Chair, is at page 234.
I can interject, Chair.
Yes.
Can I just quickly interject to say that I know the things that you're talking about, but those things don't work as well as Mr. Madeka they do. An example is what the Chair just said. As an example, if you can't trust a judge to say here who is anybody else, if you can't say the judge says, and the judge is using even positional authority, the judge is saying here is a recording, at least listen to this and compare it with what written. Same thing, Chairperson, the front page of the Sunday Times would have a picture of some palace in Dubai, and it says President Zuma's house. And then the next time, that same palace has got a different owner, and they never gone back to apologize to President Zuma that the palace that he said he owns is actually not true. Yes, but they carry on and they get away with it because they've got a monopoly of the space. This is the challenge that we're facing.
Well, we have to get back to what is relevant, but it's difficult for me not to say this, yes. That about 2 Sundays, maybe 3 Sundays back, one of the Sunday papers had an article relating to the leaks that have been happening, and on the front page, it said somebody was being fingered as the culprit for the leaks. And when you read the article, well, it said it was Mr. November. It interviewed certain people from which it got the information. And it seems that from when you read the article, it was the reason why, the reason given why it was said it was November was that it was said he was close to Mr. Godan, Minister Godan, and that he wanted Mr. Godan to help him to get appointed as National Director of Public Prosecutions. Now, you would have expected that I think this was the Sunday Independent. You would have expected that the journalist would check, for example, what are the requirements for somebody to be the National Director of Public Prosecutions before writing that story. In terms of the relevant act, you must have a legal qualification. You must be able to practice as a lawyer in all the courts in this country. Mr. Member doesn't have a legal qualification. And if I'm not mistaken, already by that time, there was a short list of people who were to be interviewed for the position of National Director of Public Prosecutions. So you ask yourself, what kind of journalism is that? People come and make an accusation against somebody. You have got to ask the question, why are you saying that? Why are you accusing him? What's the basis? And if they give you the basis of journalist, you expect that the journalist would examine the basis to see whether it makes sense. Somebody says that auditor wants to be head of the NPA, and the journalist doesn't say, but hang on, you need to be a lawyer to be head of the NPA. They don't say that. They just write the story. So, yeah, okay, all right.
You know, Chairperson, that's where I was going to. You have indicated two critical instances of media reporting which were not factually accurate. But the point is this. Why would one newspaper lose government business because of that? And the rest of the media who are equally guilty on that assumption of factual inaccurate reporting don't go out of business. Perhaps Mr. Manyi would help us then.
Yeah. Chairperson, I think the reason I brought this list here, so that people can see how much is spent. I want to challenge, let's say, this house is of extra. In year two, I don't know how many millions they're getting now, but in 2012-18, they got like 28 million. I want to challenge Tito Black to say government must not do business with them. Just 3 months, Chairperson, I guarantee you this place will shut down. Just 3 months, it will shut down. So what Mr. Maleka is saying, I don't think he understands the impact of the slice of government in anything. Even this house, which has got both business from government and elsewhere, but at least from GCIS. And in fact, that 28 million that they got in 2012 as Chiefs of Black Star is just one part. There are the rest of other government departments that do direct business with them. The figure could easily be 100 million. Let government not give them that amount. Just 3 months, I guarantee you, it's shut down.
Mr. Manyi, I think I do understand, and it's something that I'm going to converse with you at length tomorrow. Because on your...
Still here tomorrow.
Oh, are you not here tomorrow?
No, I thought we were going to finish today.
Well, if he was never told about tomorrow, Mr. Manyi is entitled to think we would finish today, depending. Let's go on and see how far we get.
Yes. Chair, I've not even started with the essential details that he has given this morning. I've not even gone to his statement. I'm just trying to understand the basic theory of his suggestion. That a mere critical reporting against the state means that you will fall down on your belly by losing government business. That I don't understand.
Well, he is saying revenue from government advertising is so big in any newspaper, or at least it was very big in the New Age, and he's making the Black Star. Based on what he knows to be the position, how much they are getting from government, or at least how much they were getting from government at a certain stage. If they were not to get advertising for 3 months, even they would collapse. That's what he is saying.
Yes. And I want to test that here because we were at page 231 where we got diverted by all of these things. And we have now confirmed that the total advertisement spend from just GCIS alone for 2011 to 2012 was 194 million for all the media houses for that year, just from one government entity, and that is GCIS. On that approach, Mr. Manyi gave some explanation about how that pie was divided amongst the various houses. What I wanted to test with him is what you had already put to him about the comparisons that he has made, that, for instance, SABC got the biggest pie. And if I may ask for your permission to test the answers that he has given in that regard, because the suggestion that I'd like to make is that the comparison is not well-founded.
Yes, you may do that.
Mr. Manyi, are you at page 231?
Just before that,
yeah.
Can I just briefly address just the intro that you given, because I think that intro is incorrect.
Yes.
It's incorrect in that it says just one entity. GCIS is not just one entity, it's a conduit. When you say GCIS, you must see the entirety of government or best part of government. Those
different departments
bring to GCIS. So you can't have some kind of a preoccupation that 194 is government GCIS budget. GCIS got almost zero budget. It's just a conduit. So all that money is money from different departments, as it was. So that must be very clear.
Thank you.
Can I put questions?
Able to your question.
Thank you. Mr. Manyi, are you at page 231?
231.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You have indicated that at 24 for that year got almost 18 million rand, correct?
18, yes.
We now know from what you told us that at 24 is owned by the NASFES group, and that group owns a number of newspaper publications, correct?
Yes.
They include, amongst others, City Press, correct?
Yes.
So that if you were to test what City Press got by way of government revenue from GCIS, you will not look at the total group owned by NASPES. You look at City Press itself for that year, correct?
No. I think the City Press probably constitutes upwards of 90% of this number. That's the publication that we didn't see. So with all these other things like we have whatever magazines they have and so on, it's not the kind of publication that government was using. The main publication was City Press. So this I'm almost sure, Chairperson, that about 90% plus was City Press.
Well, look at what the figures that you produced say about the total revenue earned by City Press from GCIS as a conduit for that year. If you look somewhere towards the bottom of the page and understand that the identification of the publications here is alphabetical, you will see that somewhere there is City Press reference. And my reading of what City Press earned by way of revenue for that year was 199,323 rand and 30 cents. These are the figures that you yourself produced, correct?
Yeah, those are just figures.
I'm sorry, Mr. Malega, where are you getting the figure for City Press?
And almost 2/3 down the page, you will see that there is a
231.
No, page 231, yes.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I see it. Yes, thank you.
And Chair, I'll take you through some of the newspapers under this table. The point for now is that if you take City Press, which on Mr. Manyi's evidence constitute almost 80 to 90% of the at 24 NASWES stable, for that year alone, City Press received revenue of 199,000 odd rand. You see that? And we know that City Press has been in a long-established business of publication, at least by the year 2011 and 2012. We will look at the open source information so that we could tell the chairperson about its lineage up to 2012. But for now, if you take the total art revenue earned by City Press for that financial year, was almost 200,000 rand. Compare that with what TNA earned for that year. And you will find that, Chair, at page 234.
Thank you.
The second last entry at page 234. Are you there?
Mm-hmm.
And we now know from your evidence that for that financial year, on a comparative level, TNA earned almost 8.7 million rand of government advertisement revenue from GCIS. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes or no?
Mr. Chairperson, there's a context to this.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty much like the chairperson was pointing out. I think Mr. Marika is comparing apples to pears this way. City Press is a weekly publication, and the TNA was a daily publication, Monday to Friday. And TNA was not only a national newspaper, it had it's national and it also had provincial provincial publications on a daily basis, and so on. So to compare a day-to-day national newspaper with a weekender, one day in a week, is not a correct comparison.
Let me suggest to you immediately that that explanation, I will demonstrate shortly that it is mistaken. But for now, let's confirm the facts. On the facts as we have it, for that financial year, TNA has earned 20 times more than City Press from government's advertisement business.
Can I respond to that, Chair?
Yeah.
Now, I don't understand what Mr. Malega, where is going, Chairperson, because that may be the case. What's wrong with that if what was, because even Ms. Williams, when she was here, she explained the Telma. Now, what happens if this kind of things that departments were looking for required the new age? This is what drives where we place newspapers. The GCIS is not some social development department that is seeking to spread things equally to a whole range of newspapers. No, it's not about that. So as to how much each newspaper eventually got is really neither here nor there. What is important is what were in the business plans, what was the campaign that the departments were putting up, and then put those campaigns and the LSMs targeted into the Telma system. What did the Telma system point out?
No, I hear what you are saying, Mr. Manyi, but I think what is happening is that you understood that evidence given by certain witnesses before this commission in relation to GCIS and revenue, which TNA got, you understood it in a certain way, which prompted you to get this information on this page as to what other people were getting. And I think, rightly or wrongly, your first stance, as I understand it, was to say, look at what TNA was getting, look at what everyone was getting, before going into what the differences were. I think Mr. Maleka is starting there to say the basis of your comparison was not right first, and then saying, let's take one paper and not look at the company, at the group, And then he says City Press. When you look at City Press, comparing it with the New Age, annual revenue for the period, the City Press got much less. And then in response, you make the point, and I think the point is a point that you were entitled to make, to say, well, maybe we have to look at even comparing the New Age with City Press, because the New Age was a daily newspaper Monday to Friday. The City Press is a weekend paper. So, but I'm simply saying that's where this whole discussion started from. You understood evidence given by some witnesses to be projecting a certain image or a certain point. You sought to contradict that by using these figures. He is now saying, but the basis that you used is not right. That's where the whole thing is at the moment.
And I'm contesting that, Chairperson, because I think his approach is very mechanical in that he is looking at the size of the City Press, and the process is not mechanical, it's a bit more scientific. The process is more like target marketing. Now, it may very well be, just like I said, Daily Sun will have the biggest circulation, but does it have the kind of market that you're looking for? Yes or no? So it's not as mechanical as the biggest gets the biggest, so to speak. The issue is, at that specific point in time, what was the campaign that was being run, what were the LSMs that were being targeted, and etc. And what did the system say? I think the only discussion we should be having on this matter is whether, despite what the system said, we went and we put something different. That's the only credible discussion we can have on this. Otherwise, this is not going to take us anywhere, Chairperson, because the issue at hand is that GCIS is informed by Telma. So if Telma says the most appropriate and relevant newspaper for this kind of a campaign is the New Age, that is the most objective way that we can put into court.
Mr. Manyi, I'm going to take you to Telma, and I'll show you that the New Age was not even assessed on the basis of Telma. And I'll show you that your attempt to run away from a comparison on a paper-by-paper basis by suggesting that City Press was a weekend newspaper and the New Age was a daily publication, and therefore the comparison in terms of revenue is inappropriate. That is not correct. Look at the other daily newspapers. You have told the chairperson, as I recall your evidence, and I hope that I got it correct, at page 231 about the Daily Sun. You remember that? Chair, if you go to page 231,
Yes, I'm there.
you will see that the fourth bottom entry relates to the Daily Sun. And my recollection of Mr. Manyi's evidence was that that was a newspaper with the biggest daily circulation.
Yeah.
Look at what it earned from GCIS for that month. Can you confirm the figure for us, please?
It's right there.
Are you asking me to read it into the record?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, please read that the figure into the record, Mr. Manyi, for the Daily Sun.
8,778.
The biggest daily newspaper of wide circulation.
Again, Chairperson, if I may interrupt.
Yes.
Again, see, Mr. Malek, it's almost like we are coming like how journalists report stuff. He is now coming up with a standby, which is totally out of context. He now, I've explained that the psychographics of the Daily Sun, although it's got a big circulation, but people that would not have made an example of, it's not where you would put an analysis of a particular judgment, because the market does not do that. So therefore, and I've been at pains to explain that the actual numbers are meaningless. It's a mechanical process. The issue is target marketing. Who are you targeting? Where are the people that you are targeting? Which publication is very appropriate for who you are targeting? This is what counts in this place.
Well, Mr. Manyi, you are entitled to add the kind of explanation to your answer, which you have done. It's legitimate for you to say, I hear what you are saying, but what about this ABCD, as you have said?
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I may conclude the daily-to-daily newspaper comparison by dealing with two additional daily publications, which
Yes.
you will get on page 234.
234, you said?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Fourth from the bottom is the Times. And Mr. Manyi, I take it that you know that the Times is also a daily newspaper. Correct?
That is the
Times. If you look at page 234, the answer is?
No, at the end of you.
Oh, he didn't hear the end of the question. Just
Yes.
repeat it.
Oh, am I correct when I suggest to you that the Times is a daily publication?
Was it publication? Yes.
It was.
Shut down now.
Yes. At that point in time, you're correct. In 2011, 2012, it was a daily publication.
Yes.
And look at the amount of government advertisement revenue it received from GCIS. It is about 183,379 rand and 20 cents, correct?
Yeah, Chairperson, I what's right to it? We can do this the whole day. The answer is the same. That Mr. Malika, he has taken a mechanical approach, and I've been explaining that things are not as mechanical as you reach them to be. I've explained that there's a bit more sophistication in deciding where the ad should go. There's something called target marketing, and all that. It may very well be that Telma would have told people otherwise, the ones that are placing the ads. So this is an outcome of largely what Telma does, but it's more than that, Chairperson. Not only does GCIS follow Telma, GCIS also has a transformation mandate. For instance, there are many of the publications that even on the programming of Telma, they won't feature. But GCIS as an organization with a strategy on media development and diversity, it's a duty and a responsibility to make sure that they support media than over and above mainstream media. It started everybody, including mainstream media. It cannot be that GCIS is expected to just support all others except those that don't have big names. Can't be.
You know, Mr. Manyi produced these figures in order to persuade you that in the broader scheme of things, TNA got about, what, 5-6% of the total ad spend from government in 2011-2012. When we try to examine that broad proposition on a granular basis with reference to his own figures, we are told that that is a technical exercise. The key question is, what's the point of producing these figures if you don't want us to examine them closely on a more accurate analytical basis?
Okay. No, you certainly are entitled to ask him questions, and he's certainly entitled to answer and to give an explanation if he has an explanation, because what you have done now is to look at daily publications.
Yes.
To say, okay, with regard to the city press, you say it was a weekly newspaper. Let's look at other daily newspapers, like which other newspapers which were daily publications in the same way as the New Age was.
Yes.
That's where you are.
Yes.
He has given an answer in regard to the Times. He has given an answer in regard to, I think.
Chair, if you look at, and I'll be quick here, if you look at 3 columns above the Times, you'll see the SAR. And you'll see the SAR for that total 12 months period, and 97,000 rand.
And then the Citizen is not too far above that.
Yes, it's 247.
247.
You have the Herald, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
So on any comparative basis, and I'd like to put this conclusion to Mr. Manyi for him to comment if he wants to.
Yes.
These are newspapers which have been in business for quite some